Hello and welcome to Resume Building. My name is Damien Reed, and in this course I am going to show you how to build a resume with little to no experience, or if you are a student. Resume building, the beginnings. As you may have already noticed, in order to apply and even be considered for a job, you first need a resume. Your resume, most of the time, is the first thing an employer will look at to get an idea of who you are before an interview. Your resume is by far the most important document you can send out, so it needs to be as close as possible to perfection. An interesting side note is that employers spend an average of 20 to 30 seconds analyzing a resume, so it is very crucial that you create one that immediately grabs their attention. The entire course is going to be divided into two sections. Section 1 will be how to write a resume with no experience, and this section will be a tutorial on how to write a resume with little to no experience. This section will include slides such as how to write a resume with no experience, applicant tracking systems, and using the job posting to your advantage. Section 2 will be how to write a resume as a student, and this section will be more centered on how to write a resume as a student, whether that be a high school or college student. All right, now before we begin, there are just a few things to remember. Before you start working on your resume, there are a few things to consider. Building a resume is not a one and done deal. It is a project that you will edit for many months or even years, depending on how much that you do. You may find yourself not having enough information before you turn in your resume to a job application, and you'll remember some volunteer work you may have done previously over the summer. In this case, you will have to go back and edit that section, and depending on how you want to build it, you may have to edit your resume at least 20 times before it is acceptable to submit to a job. The internet is your best friend. Here we're going to go over key information on how to find templates. So what is so amazing about technology is that there are already hundreds of pre-made resume layouts that can help you in building your perfect resume. You can basically find a template anywhere on Google, websites, or even Microsoft Word. It is understandable that not everyone is a graphic artist, so creating a resume from scratch is very difficult for many. Personally, as a senior in college finishing my degree, I have never taken a class on how to properly design a template, so I had to search the internet to find a resume template that worked for me. And finally, perhaps the most important thing to remember is that when you are building your resume, you will want to refrain from adding every single detail that you can think of. If your resume ends up passing 1 page in length and going to 2 or 3 pages, it is time to stop and edit severely. Just remember, you are not writing a biography of yourself, more so a document of relevant experiences, skills, and attributes that fit in line with what an employer is looking for. For example, if your hobbies include stargazing and that you drive a 2013 Ford Focus, those are indeed interesting to know, but for an employer at a company, they cannot care less. Section 1. Resume building with no experience. Key outline for your resume. Choosing a structure. If you are attempting to write a resume with no experience, chances are you have not had much experience as even writing resumes. The awesome feature about resumes is that you can write one with any kind of experience, even none. It might look empty or even not as professional as someone who's been working in their field for 20 plus years, but everyone has to start somewhere, and you'll build your resume over time. For now, here's what you want to focus on adding: a header, an objective, education, experience, and skills. For the education, we have already addressed that we might not have that much experience, but I will show you a way to get around that. Your education. If you have no experience, adding your prior education is one of the best things you can do. Keep in mind, rarely does it matter what high school or college you have or are attending, so do not feel embarrassed to put a small unknown high school or even a community college. Education is education. Here's an example of how you could format your education experience. For example, I attend Sam Houston State University pursuing a degree in public health. So I would put 2018, which is when I started, until now. I would then put the university, my degree, and my GPA. I would also add any relevant coursework to the job that I'm applying for. So if I went to a hospital and was looking to be an infection control specialist, I would put such coursework as epidemiology, health planning, or even healthcare policy.
Finally, you're going to add your extracurricular activities and achievements. This can be a president's list, a scholarship, or even your dean's list, as well as many more. So a question could be, but what if I'm still in high school? Well, here's an example of how you could format that. As you can see on the right, at the very top, you would put your high school and where it's located. You could put your expected graduation date and any relevant coursework to the job, just like in the college section. You would also include any extracurricular activities. This can be any clubs, sports, awards, or anything else. Including relevant experience. When it comes to employers, they are looking for one thing only, the best possible candidate. The only way an employer can see this and allow an individual to come in for an interview is to see what they have done that could provide them a suitable employee for the job. The first step is to look at the job description to see what the job is looking for. Here's an example of a job description for an entry-level marketing consultant. Including relevant experience, continued. Of course, I would not include the entire description, but you get the idea of what an entry-level position might look like. These skills required do not have to be from another job. In fact, you might have already developed most of these skills while at school, pursuing your hobbies, volunteering, or helping a family member. What you want to do now is to take a step back and think of everything you have done related to the skills and duties the employer is looking for. You will then want to write them down almost like a to-do list, but you have already done them. For example, wrote product reviews for a tech-oriented website, convinced a friend to switch to an iPhone after explaining the advantages over an Android phone, completed a free online course in marketing. Including relevant experience, continued. All of these are relevant in a way to what the job posting says. However, we have run into another problem. This list is missing resume keywords. It might seem a bit unfair, but when employers list a job posting, they might have hundreds of applications turned in, and they simply cannot look at every single application that they have. In response to this, a lot of companies use an ATS, or an applicant tracking system. This system scans your resume to look for keywords to see whether or not you have the experience they're looking for. In response to this, you will need to write an ATS-friendly resume, and on the next slide is an example of a right and wrong way to write one. Applicant tracking system examples, the right way. Applicant tracking system examples, the wrong way. Do you see the difference? You are saying the same thing on both, but the left is using fancy keywords that the ATS will pick up and accept your resume as qualified experience. Listing key skills. This is a section where you basically get to brag about yourself, but in a more professional way. You now have to convince an employer that you have the skills necessary to be successful in the role that you are applying for. What you will want to do is go to the skills section of the job posting and look at them. Make note of the skills required and see which ones align with your personal experience. You know yourself better than anyone else, so you will know if you have skills such as analytical skills, creative thinking skills, leadership skills, etc. When you are matching these skills, make sure that you can prove that you have them. For example, if you put leadership as one of your skills, you will need to check and clarify that there is some type of activity or achievement that testifies to this. It is important to know that you do not need to lie on your resume in order to get the job. Rarely does this work, but if it somehow does and you make it to the interview, they will ask you questions about them and you will have to lie even more, and you will be unable to. This will make you very uncomfortable and you will definitely not get the job. Extra sections to make your resume stand out even more. If you already do not have much experience to put on your resume, you may need to add a few more sections to make sure you make your resume as nice and clean as possible. A few more sections you should consider to put on your resume are languages, certifications, and hobbies. Objective resume. So at this point, you will need to highlight the most important parts of your resume, and this is only possible once you have your document ready. It might sound confusing. This is one of the first sections of your resume, but you work on it last. Keep in mind, this is not a summary, but an objective. This is supposed to be a short introduction stating who you are and what skills you have that can benefit the company that you are applying for. This is the right way to write a resume objective. This is the incorrect way to write a resume objective. The final steps. So at this point, your resume is almost done. There are now only a few steps left to make sure your resume is top-notch and you firmly believe an employer will be amazed when they read it. Make sure you look over these steps. Follow a reverse chronological order, as in putting your most recent information in front. Add heading sections to make sure your resume is easily more accessible. Use professional fonts and appropriate font sizes. Use single-space lining. Make sure your margins are 1 inch all around. Finally, save your resume as a PDF. This is the most common type of file employees will ask for.